Welcome to VendettaSportsMedia.com. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we're here talking about UFC 313. This is a pretty solid fight card. Main event features one of the biggest stars in the sport, which is, I think, wild to say considering Pereira has been in the sport for as short as he has been, but he has quickly rose to the top and he's looking to defend the title against Magomed Ankalaev. We've got Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev in the co-main event, and we have a couple other solid fights as well throughout this main card and some solid prelims. So it's a pretty good card all around. And today we have myself and Anthony breaking down the main card. We'll start top to bottom, talk about each fight, and then at the end we'll hit some final thoughts since the prelims do have some entertaining fights to discuss. So we'll touch on those briefly at the very end. So starting off right at the top of the card, UFC 313, like I said, Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev for the light heavyweight title. What do you make of the matchup?
I mean, it had to happen. I think, especially, obviously we'll see how this fight goes, but they're talking about Pereira fighting the heavyweight, his next fight, especially if he wins. So, um, he did his, three defenses last year, beat, Jiri, Jamal Hill, another contender, and then Khalil Rountree, a little further down the list rankings wise, but still a contender nonetheless, especially how good he did in that fight. And a lot of people think Ankalaev, they've been trying to keep Pereira away from him and avoiding this fight. So I think if Pereira were to move up next, I think this is the fight that ultimately makes sense because everyone's for a while now, for a year and a half maybe, have said that Ankalaev would beat Pereira or at least be his toughest challenge. So I think if anything, I'm glad we're getting this fight. This is a fight to see to either shut some people up or, even for both sides for the fact that maybe Pereira starches Ankalaev immediately like he's doing everyone else, or if Ankalaev can actually get the wrestling going. Because, Pereira, that would probably be his weaker points in the UFC. So overall, I think this fight just had to happen. And then especially if they're already talking about moving him up a third weight division, then this fight needs to happen before he can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I have not always loved the idea of Pereira going up to heavyweight. Um, but like if he completes this fight, if he wins this one, I'll have a lot less pushback because it does feel like he knocked off the biggest guys. And at least in my opinion, the three big names in that division when he got there, um, Hill, Ankalaev, Prohashka. And that would get him wins over all three with 2 wins over Prohashka. And even when you're looking at the other big names, Blahovic has been out and Rakic lost to Prohashka when he had the chance to kind of put himself in position. Um, and he lost to Ankalaev as well. So he lost some fights when he had the chance to put himself in position to get a title fight. So if he can get this done, I think he's got a much better case at moving up. Um, I think that kind of depends on the whole John and Tom situation, but for him specifically, I think he'd have a good portion of his work done with a win here. And like you said, there's a lot going back and forth just in terms of a lot of people saying he wouldn't take this fight and the grappling dynamic. And before we even see this fight, there could be 0 takedowns. They could do 25 minutes of striking. I think Pereira taking this fight is a statement in itself. So I give him credit for that because with his star power, I think there could have been some sway to make this not happen potentially, and maybe angle for him against another striker. But here we are. He's fighting the good wrestler, even if that wrestler doesn't wrestle. There was that potential, and he had to prepare for it. And I think he deserves some credit for taking on Ankalaev.
Well, that was I agree because that's probably one of the reasons why maybe Ankalaev has been skipped over a little bit is that wrestling style. And I don't know, it's tough to call him like a completely boring fighter, but I mean, also if you compare anyone, UFC is going to struggle regardless because you can't go from Pereira to anyone in that division. There's going to be a drop off regardless. And star power, like you've been saying, or just excitement level. I mean, there's a reason we talk about it every time. If like a Pereira fight's announced, it's like, oh, we don't care, but I'll be watching. Like, and that that's a tough thing, and it feels like the UFC, those stars are few and far between. But we'll see. Regardless of the star power and the excitement level, off of pure like talent and skill level, I think this fight is one of the most important, but also just that needed to happen for this division.
Yeah, I agree. And even if at a minimum it shuts off people, if it shuts up the people who are like, oh my God, he hasn't fought Ankalaev. He hasn't fought Ankalaev. Like, at a minimum, it shuts those people up because I think this fight was the right one to be made, but people were acting like Ankalaev had like this ironclad case that like could not be denied when he fought for the title, you know, 2 years ago, and it was a draw, and then he's gone like 2-0 with a no contest. So like a lot of really just shoehorning him into has to fight for the title when that I don't think that was ever the absolute reality. Um, but at this point, I think Pereira has done the heavy lifting of taking out Proshka and Hill and Roundtree, and then you're kind of looking around, going, "Oh, who's left?" And it leaves. I shouldn't say leaves Ankalaev, but Ankalaev is one of the guys left. So he doesn't have as much work to do to get to that title shot. So
No.
it ends up working out at the end of the day. But this is not a situation where Ankalaev's on a 13 fight win streak. Like he fought for the title went to draw. That's his fault. Like a lot of people forget that aspect of the story.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I just checked. Yeah, he was 2 for 10 on takedowns, and what those two probably both happened in like the fourth or fifth, maybe it's just the fifth. But I was just gonna say that's probably like the ideal title path is you just beat a couple, have a win or two here and there, and just wait for the champion to beat three people. So then you're kind of up next. I
Mm-hmm.
think the bad thing is you would like no one really wants to fight Pereira, or the other times it would happen to be like a prime Izzy or like the prime Usman, and I don't really know if you want to see prime anybody, but
Yeah. So as far as betting goes on this fight, the odds are very, very close with Pereira minus 115, Ankalaev minus 105, which I was kind of surprised by. Um, I should say part of me is surprised, part of me is not surprised because I just always, you have the guy whose name is Magomed who can wrestle from Dagestan against the kickboxer. Part of me believes that leads to lines getting outrageous. Um, at the same time, you have, Pereira who has done great work and has been consistently getting knockouts. And at the end of the day, it kind of seems like they didn't really want to make either of these guys a big underdog. And anytime either of these guys become an underdog, one of the two sides just comes in with some money and gets it back to somewhere around to pick them. So I think that kind of shows. I don't know if this fight is going to be close, but I think in theory, when you're talking about it, you can see it going both ways very clearly. Like I could see Pereira going out there, landing a shot, baptizing Ankalaev in round one. I could also see Ankalaev going out there, landing a takedown, getting the submission in round one, or maybe he, has 25 minutes of dominant grappling. I think both fighters have very, very clear paths to winning this fight dominantly, but that kind of means you have a little bit of both, which makes it hard to pick a side in the matter.
yeah, I think well that's okay. I agree first off because I was just saying that's the other thing we always joke about Ankalaev not being the highest IQ fighter, so there's a
Yeah.
chance maybe we don't even see wrestling.
Yep.
Which in that case, I really like Pereira's chances, but it is tough because I've seen the stat. I think it's like everyone that's attempted a takedown on Pereira in the UFC has landed one in those fights. Like I'm not saying like obviously he doesn't have a 0% takedown defense, but I think that every times people have tried to take him down, they've shot multiple times. They've got at least one, which is going to be is not the nicest stat going into a fight with someone that said if he goes to the ground, it's 100% within his game plan and wheelhouse, and then they'll be fine. Or I think Ankalaev said it's 100% victory wherever we want to go, or something like that. Um, so like you said, I can see 25 minutes of dominant grappling maybe because we haven't had to see Pereira wrestle in a while or the ground in a while, which not to say he hasn't been working on it every camp, I'm sure, but specifically for this camp. But it's just tough to by for almost like a year guess where his wrestling's at because we just literally have not had to see it. And then for the other perspective, if like you said, I could see a first round knockout or even a second or third round, but just eventually, if you're gonna stand up with Pereira, like we continually have seen just about in almost every fight of his UFC career, that's not a winning formula, and you will get caught eventually, and most of the times finished. But that's while you said without going into like the specifics of the exact matchup, it is one of those wrestler versus striker matchups. Just a wrestler might decide to play to his ego too much and stand on the feet.
Yeah, this is something we talked about the last time Ankalaev fought when he fought Rakic, which wasn't that long ago. But the guy's one of the dumbest fighters to ever fight, at least in the octagon. Maybe he's a smart guy outside of the octagon. I don't know what he does outside the octagon, but the the Jan Blachowicz fight is one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in my whole entire life. Um, he lets rounds slip away because he's not urgent enough to grapple. Like, it's just baffling to me. And then when he really starts to aggressively look for the grappling in the later rounds, he gets to it. It's just like, and then in other fights, like, you're not going to wrestle Rakic at all. We're going to make it a, a 3-round kickboxing match with the guy who's 6'7" with really good kicks and power and good straight shots when you can probably land takedowns. And I know the numbers don't look good for Ankalaev as far as takedown percentage goes, but I the thing with him for me is he's really good when he gets on top, and I think that's a key to this matchup. But like, if you're good in top position, like if it takes you 2 or 3 takedowns, like fucking work for it. Get to the takedowns if you're good when you get on top, which I think he is. So it just is really baffling to me his like willingness to not attempt takedowns. And even in other fights, like the Johnny Walker fight, when he gets DQ'd because he knees him in the head, it's like that's just pure being an idiot.
Hmm.
Like there's just nothing other than that than being an idiot. Like,
He was
and
steamrolling him too. Like that
yeah,
fight would have been.
yeah, and then that even he's talking about wanting to fight for a title. That delayed it even further because now you got to run Johnny back, and that actually was that was the first. So they fought on the Abu Dhabi card in October, and then they run it back in January of last year. So like it puts them back, a few months when that happened. So it's just really dumb to me. And like, how confident can you be that he goes out there and grapples Pereira? Like I am like legitimately like concerned. Like I think he has a ton of success if he does, but I am like concerned as to whether that will be his game plan or not.
Well, and my one thing real quick, because I was just telling a friend this, it was that like talking about how we don't think he's that smart of a fighter, but it was like I do believe he's a really good striker too. So I think he
Mhm.
has some talent as a
Agree.
striker, and I think there's a good amount of not a good amount, but there's a couple of people in the top 5 of that division that are really good strikers. Obviously, no one's elite. I'd say like Pereira, but there's other really good strikers in that division. So now, when you also have a wrestling advantage over, like that's what can separate you from these other strikers that are just really good, but maybe don't have any wrestling behind them or very minimal. So when you can match them with the really good striking, and then you could take advantage of good wrestling that they don't have, but you refuse to use it in fights. It's just so weird to me. That's like, I don't know, you're just handicapping yourself. You're taking away what could make you special necessarily in a division. And so that's what I've just never understood. And like you said, I don't know if you can ideally rely on him to wrestle in this because I think in a tweet in October or August he said I'm not going to the ground. He's like it's going to be a pure stand up. But I do think already with that quote he had like last week or maybe it was this week of like, oh, but if we go to the ground, it's 100%, victory. I got it. So I think, I mean, you'd imagine with the belt on the line, you'd understand that wrestling might be your best avenue for victory. But then again, what he didn't shoot till like the 4th or 5th round on Blachowicz in that fight. So I don't know. It's always easier to go wrestlers over the strikers, but I'm I'm going Pereira probably for this fight, hoping because the whole thing of every round starts on the feet. I'm hoping there's been improvement to the defensive wrestling, being able to stop takedowns. Um, I want to say I don't know the exact stats, but I know Ankalaev doesn't have like the greatest submission rate on the ground. I know his ground and pound is good, but I don't think the submissions are entirely like the scariest thing on the planet. So I would just lean Pereira to find that shot and hopefully Ankalaev doesn't go complete grappling heavy and does try to stay with him on the feet, in which that case I think Pereira's chances to find that shot skyrocket.
Yeah, so a couple things off that. One, I'll add to the submission point really quick. Magomed has 0 UFC
Okay,
submissions.
see, I thought it was even one. So yeah, 0.
Yeah, 0, and I don't know what his attempt is looking like. I his official attempts may be 0 because in order for them to track an attempt, you kinda have to get close. But he does that thing where like he gets the back and then he'll like punch and then be like, "Oh, I'm gonna slip in the rear naked choke," and then he'll stop and throw some more punches. So and it'll like kind of do some face cranks a little bit. So it really hasn't been, but it hasn't been like anything outside of rear naked chokes off the top of my mind. But um, to me, as far as his submission game goes, it's really mostly would come in the form of a rear naked choke if he lands one. Just like Pereira goes to give his back, he jumps body triangle, wins the hand fighting, slips it under the neck, like that type of thing. If he gets anything else, maybe like a head and arm while he's on top, gets the arm triangle, something like that. So, but that's I think there's a chance he gets the submission, and I to let people in a little bit. I already bet the submission at plus 1100, but like it's because it was plus 1100. Not if it's plus 500, I wouldn't have done it. So um now, back to a couple other things here with this matchup is I'm really interested to see when the first takedown Magomed attempts, assuming he does, when it comes. Because if he waits until the fourth or fifth round, like he did against Blahovic, I think he may run into some serious problems. Um, that's assuming he doesn't get knocked out first. Like there's always a chance that you get nuked with the left hand, or a head kick or any other weapon that Pereira has. But he can't really defend leg kicks at all. So if he really is waiting to grapple, like I don't think he's going to run in like an idiot and getting countered, and I don't think he's going to be eating like a ton of shots to the head. I could think it could be low volume on the outside, but if it's a low volume on the outside, it's just going to be Pereira just touching him with the leg kick over and over and over and over. And if Pereira can take out his leg enough, it can really make it hard to land the takedowns because you got to close that distance. And if your leg's messed up, now you're not closing distance as quickly, as efficiently. It gives you less power when you're trying to land that takedown. So that I think is a big concern if he doesn't grapple immediately. So if he waits until round 4 to grapple and gets stuffed 2 or 3 times, assuming Pereira's kicking the leg, I wouldn't be shocked unless Magomed manages to have like a serious cardio edge in those rounds. Um, on the flip side, if he attempts early takedowns, I'm interested to see because Pereira really likes to hunt for that guillotine. Maybe he sticks it, and maybe he's the one who lands the submission. But I'm interested to see if he, against Vlahovic, he squeezed on a guillotine for like 2 minutes, and then it looked like his arms were taxed. That was also in Salt Lake City, so maybe that had something to do with it. But didn't seem like he had as much power in his shots after that. So I'm interested to see, and he also went the distance with Bruno Silva, who was attempting takedowns. So I'm interested to see if Magomed attempts early takedowns. Does that take some of the sting out of Pereira's shots? And if it does that let Magomed then get more aggressive because he's not as concerned about the knockout coming back? So those are, as far as grappling goes, I think when that first takedown comes I don't think it's as easy as Magomed, the first time he attempts one, is gonna start having success. I think the when he attempts that takedown is really gonna matter.
Yeah, I'd agree because I think just for some reason you're against one of the scariest strikers in the world in prayer, but for some reason people refuse to even try takedowns and stuff. But I think we've seen in his fights, just when he has to think about it, in those fights he's been less successful necessarily. It's not straight. I guess anytime anything's considered less successful when you don't get when they're not knocked out in the first round, which is tough because that's what we have to compare to a lot of Pereira's other fights. But even that Blachowicz one, which you said that one was in Utah,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't say Pereira has any gas tank problems really. I thought the couple times like Adesanya, I thought he's been fine, but that one was gonna be one where I was like he looked tired, but I didn't know that. Forgot that was in Utah then.
Yeah.
But
I think as far as his cardio goes, I think he's got good. I don't think he's like a cardio machine, but I think he's got
hmm
solid cardio in the late rounds. And a lot of the times, if he's in the late rounds, that means he's been hitting guys for, like, if he gets to round, like against Roundtree, like he
hmm
did so much damage, he could have been dead tired too, and it wouldn't have mattered just because of the amount of damage he can inflict. Like round 5 against Adesanya's legs are toast from getting leg kicked in it. Like he could have been dead tired, it wouldn't have mattered. So I think that's also important with his like gas tank and cardio stuff.
yeah. So I agree with you that I'm curious to see when Ankalaev shoots because once again it should be probably in the first round, and it's just that yeah, I mean you always hear on the broadcast too they love doing it, but just even attempting the takedown or showing him that look, gets him thinking a little bit, and maybe he lets those hands go a little less, or it just throws him off a bit, because I mean besides him getting knocked out by Izzy though, I'd say the most recent I don't know if it was his. Or last closest fight to losing was that Blachowicz one. And I just checked, he was 3 for 8 in takedowns. I remember he was mixing it in well. I know there was some cage control in that fight too, but it just seems like in the fights where people can get their wrestling going a little bit, not even dominant wrestling, but just keeps it going a little bit. For those fights tend to maybe even go to decision more often than not. Um, and then for Pereira, I do think, like you said, I think those leg kicks are going to be insanely huge. Obviously, Pereira has phenomenal leg kicks, but we saw a Rakic tat up Ankalaev a little bit with some leg kicks and stuff, and I think that could be a real key because this could be a fight that maybe extends into some later rounds. I think so. I think those leg kicks, and obviously Pereira actually is one of the few fighters that has great body work as well that goes to the body. So I just think if this fight, unfortunately for Pereira, I would say I'm sure he would want a quick first, second round knockout. But if this tends to go to the later rounds, I think, especially the championship rounds, I think his body work and his leg kicks will pay dividends, which we just haven't seen in a while because I think was Adesanya the last one I think to go into those deep rounds. So, but I
I
mean
think
he
Roundtree got to like
or
4, but
four.
that
Okay.
that's still kind of different based on the way that
Mhm.
fight went. It kind of felt like Roundtree was really trying to get that early round knockout, and then when he didn't, he was just there
Mhm.
after that kind of.
But to be fair, like you said, the he was done for a reason, or he was looking that bad for a reason. It was all that damage
Mhm.
accumulated. I just think Pereira fights in such a style too. Obviously, he gets so many knockouts, but he goes to the legs, he goes to the body. He really taxes these other fighters. We just don't really get to see it pay off because it's usually over before the fourth and fifth round. So I think that is another thing I'm a little interested to see is if this is going to be a longer fight, what these two fighters will both look like in 4 and 5.
Yep, me too. Um, so as far as my prediction goes, I'm taking Magomed, and I really just have like such a hard time seeing. Like I know I am like leading. I have been on this podcast talking about how he's an absolute idiot, but like how dumb you'd be to not grapple in this one. Like I think he's like really dumb, but like it would be like a brand new level of stupid to not grapple here. So I'm just kind of assuming that he will, and like I just think usually I also tend to be on the edge or on the side of the fighter with, the grappling edge, as well as being on the side of the fighter who's a little bit younger. I don't love Pereira's durability. I think it's better at 205 than it was at 185. Adesanya was hurting him more than he's been getting hurt at 205. Part of that's Adesanya being precise with the shots and landing some good ones. But I think, the weight cut was a serious thing, and I think he's still cutting a lot of weight. But um, I think expect his durability to be better at 205, but it's still not something that I'm just completely out of my mind. That is not an issue at all. I've kind of used that to pick Prohashka and Hill against him, the last 2 times, but in this fight, I think it could be a little bit different, especially if Magomed starts to grapple a little bit, and then that lets him land some shots. Then I'm gonna be interested to see how his durability looks after that point. I don't think Magomed's going out there landing a right, and Pereira's gonna randomly fall over and collapse. But it's just something on my radar that I want to add in there. So just a lot of small things combined to lead me towards the Magomed side. But if Pereira were to go out there, kick him in the leg, and hit him in the body a couple times, and then nuke him with a left hook, like I'm not, I wouldn't be shocked. So the pick's Ankalaev, but like I've mentioned a couple times, I see the path for Pereira.
Did you have, if you were to lean one way by finish or decision, what would you? You said probably not gonna starch him, maybe, but
Yeah, I'd probably go by finish, just because
by finish though. Okay.
yeah, I think Pereira is more likely to win a decision, because I think in order for Magomed to win the fight, I think he has to have a lot of success. Like, I don't think he wins like a decision where he controls 3 rounds. Like, I think that if he can control like 3 rounds of grappling against Pereira, he's going to put himself in a position to like either tire him out, land some damage in ground and pound, or land a submission. So I think like in order for him to like do enough to win the rounds, it would also be putting him in a position to finish, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I'd lean finish, but not as like yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but like I lean finish just because in order for him to have the success, I think it's type of success that leads to a
To a
finish.
finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. I get it. I'm still gonna go. I'm definitely gonna go Pereira still. I'm gonna
Mhm.
bank on God, well, I'm really banking on the lack of aggressive wrestling from Ankalaev, but then I'm also holding out hope. I mean, you see him training with Glover and all those people every day at the wrestling. I mean, I the sparring and the practice matters. I assume not everyone, not all, like wrestling can happen behind the scenes. It's not the only reason we have to see it is in the octagon. So I'm banking on that to be better. But overall, I'm just hoping for a left hook, preferably early. But I do see if this fight goes longer, you like you said Pereira by decision too. I can see some success in those later rounds and such, especially if he does the Blachowicz route where he doesn't start shooting till the fourth and fifth. I also think that's probably not a winning formula. Um, but the last thing I will say, I think this could be depends how it always depends how the knockout completely happens, but um, Pereira on a 4-fight KO streak. I think this is probably the one, maybe outside that first Jiri fight, is where I would say it's probably the closest line for sure, or people, really think that Ankalaev is going to win. So I think this one could be his most like impressive or shocking, Pereira moment yet so far. If he lands another perfect crazy knockout, so that's just something I'm excited for to see.
Yeah. I think if Pereira comes out here and shows like, to be honest, I think his grappling defense and like against Blachowicz and like when he fought Bruno Silva and Andreas Michailidis, he showed some like like, oh my god, this
It
is
was
not
bad.
good. It was
Yeah,
bad. But if he goes out there and shows like serious improvements, I'll be very impressed. Not only from the strides he's made, but like doing that in a second sport at 37 years old, I believe right now. So like that would be very impressive to me if he comes out, shows some much improved defensive grappling, and then starts to pick him apart on the feet and knocks him out. I think that's the type of performance that would really, really impress me and um, probably impress a lot of people who watch the sport. I know he impresses people already, but I think when you're talking about going out there and defending against some grappling and doing things like that, I think that's things that you really can't. Like if he goes out there and makes Ankalaev go 0 for 7 on takedowns and knocks him out in the third round, like how do you not be like, oh my god, that was special type thing. So
yeah.
I
Also, I just want to say too, this is kind of our
mhm,
first. Uh, I mean, it is only March, so there's only been two before, but it's our first real pay-per-view event with a headlining star and stuff. Because
mhm,
I would say that Islam one kind of got shortchanged with the Moicano one, and then
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. DDP and Strickland. I don't know how many people were really begging for that one. So I'm hoping too the feeling on Saturday amongst UFC fans and and no more casual fans just wanting to watch the sports, or if they even know, they just see the name Pereira. I'm hoping it's going to be a good, fun, big time kind of first really big pay-per-view of 2025.
Yep. I completely agree with that, but I do have a short aside. The amount of people that in public, because at work a lot of people know I do this, and big UFC guy. The amount of people that were asking me about Sean Strickland versus Dricus Duplessis shocked me.
Really?
Absolutely shocked me. I don't know. I don't know if it was just a handful of random people who really cared, who like Sean Strickland. I don't know if he's a bigger star than I assume him to be, but that fight had more motion than I really expected in terms of like people I run into on a day-to-day basis. Um, I doubt it did incredibly well on the pay-per-view, but I mean it was so much where people were coming in. I was seeing people after the fight, and they were like, "Man, Sean Strickland sucks."
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
I tried telling you a week ago.
Yeah.
I told you on Friday and Thursday the
I
fight was
was
gonna
wondering why
suck.
you were so excited.
Exactly. Trust me. You think I spread the Sean Strickland hate on the podcast or the Sean Strickland hate in person when people ask me? Don't even get that's. I mean, there's no filter there. I can tell them whatever I want.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump down to the co-main event. Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. This is a rematch. The pair originally fought at UFC London. I believe that was 2 years ago. That was the fight before Justin fought Dustin Poirier. So it's been a minute. And at that fight, they went to majority decision. I had to go back and look at that. At the time, I thought in my head, I thought it was a split decision because it was a really close fight. There was actually someone who scored that fight a draw, which was insane scorecard. They scored rounds 1 and 2 for Fiziev and round 3, 10-8 for
10-8.
Gaethje. The other two judges had it round 1 Fiziev, round 2 and 3 for Gaethje. I thought it was a really close fight. I'm not really. I'll gladly get upset about a robbery or a bad decision, but that one was a really close one, and not one that I would be too passionate about as far as a decision goes. But now we've got these guys a little bit older, both of them, and Justin Gaethje's coming off the KO loss to Max Holloway, which is one of the most brutal knockouts of all time. Rafael Fiziev hasn't fought in like a year and a half. He's coming off an ACL tear in his last fight to Mateusz Gamrot. So both fighters are coming off pretty big like obstacles to overcome. What do you make of those things coming into this fight?
Um, I think it's big. So I want to start it back from I think last week when we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about possible replacements. And the reason I didn't mention Fiziev, even though you brought him up, the reason he wasn't on my list is because they already fought. But I guess I remembered that fight now coming into fight week and hearing all the different things. I didn't realize how close that fight was. I think I got misled by that third round being kind of such of a Gaethje running away with it that I kind of assumed, oh, most or some of the fight was like that. Most of the fight was like that, not just the one round. So, in saying that, I think I'm excited. And then is this a 5 round, right?
No, 3 rounds.
See, okay, and I heard Gaethje asked for that, but I also heard he was asking for the Hooker fight to be 3 anyways. So
Okay.
I
Interesting.
didn't. Yeah, that was I can't remember where if I was on Twitter or where I heard that, but um. So okay, if it is a 3 round, then I guess it's really a straight running back. I thought we were gonna maybe get some extra rounds out of it
Yeah.
too, but
I didn't know at first because I'm like, man, would they really make Fiziev fight 5 rounds on short notice when they could drop it to 3? Like I assumed Fiziev would have been the guy to ask for 3 rounds because
mhm,
I mean Gaethje's got the cardio advantage and Gaethje's been training for 5, so I would have
yeah.
thought that Gaethje would have gladly tried to campaign for 5 while Fiziev was the guy asking for 3.
Like I said, that could have been wrong. I'll have to. I'm curious. I will have to look at that afterwards. But so now, yeah, if it's a street or if it's a straight 3 rounds, run it back. I do think both of them. I think the ACLs tough to come off of. I know some people believe in ring rust. Dominic Cruz doesn't. Shout out to also just retired, but yeah, I know he doesn't believe in ring rust. But I do think anytime you're coming back from an injury like that in any sport too, it's obviously going to be tough, the rehab and everything, and then coming off an injury like that and you're getting right back in the octagon with like one of the hardest, hitting people at the weight class too is scary. And then for Gaethje, I wouldn't say the knockout is bad mental wise because I think if a knockout were to affect anyone less, it would be Gaethje. Like he's a true warrior and all that stuff, and I think he even posted like the videos came out of him after the Holloway knockout, like looking like a dead body on the canvas and everything, and he just said, "Oh, warrior going out on a shield." So like I truly don't think he cares. I think the biggest thing would just be he's always been good about getting stunned and like still fighting and stuff. Although he has been knocked out before, but it's just kind of if you're worried like how bad is that chin now as he continually gets older. And I think he continually hints he's gonna retire. Maybe there's a fight or two left. So I would say that would be the biggest drawback for the durability of Gaethje. And I don't know how many times. And yeah, like I said, this is someone that gets rocked, has been rocked in a multitude of fights, but does his little like drunken warrior throws back and somehow turns the tide. But like we said, I feel like we always said, that just can't be a good strategy forever, though.
Yeah, and it's wild to me because I don't know if you were able to watch the press conference last night, but I watched the press conference and Gates is up there talking about like I need to go back to the way I once was, where I don't really care about getting hit. And I'm like, are you shitting me? like,
I
I
didn't.
think the opposite. I think you should
Yeah.
really care about getting hit now. I think you should try to be hit less now. And maybe that helps him be more aggressive and land some shots. But oh my god, just being like, yeah, I should really push the issue and not care if I get hit by Rafael Fiziev is like coming off that knockout. I'm like, oh my god, can I get a bigger red flag?
Uh-huh.
Meanwhile, you've got a guy in Fiziev who, when it comes to, I have never been a big believer in ACLs in MMA fighters and the effects it has. However, I have begun to get swayed. Um, Looking at post ACL Cater, looking at post Achilles Jamal Hill. I don't think those guys are as good as they were prior to their injuries, either of them. Um, Rakic, I don't think has won a fight, albeit both those guys probably could have beat him without the
Before.
injury. So I don't know that I saw the same drop as I did in Cater and Hill, but that's maybe it played a factor, maybe it didn't. We don't really know on that one. But when you're looking at Fiziev, like he's a guy where he's super quick, he's super athletic. Like this isn't the guy who's just like standing there plodding forward trying to get to his takedowns. It's a guy who's trying to be hyper athletic, hyper quick, super use his reflexes. Like he's trying to be an athlete out there. And if there's anybody that an ACL is going to affect, he's probably close to the top of the list for that type of thing. The saving grace, I think, is he has had plenty of time. Like it sucks being out of competition for a year and a half, but that's enough time to clear an ACL and go through a full training camp with some cushion in between those two things. So that's nice. But yeah, and so that's a red flag on Fiziev. And they asked Fiziev at the press conference, "Hey, why do you think you're the favorite?" And he's like, "I don't know. I lost the last time. I haven't fought in
That was
forever.
awesome.
My knee was messed up," and it's like he doesn't even. I don't even know if he believes he's gonna win this fight. So I'm seeing both red flags on both these guys. So it makes it really hard to confidently say how this fight's gonna go.
I do think Fiziev is getting a bunch of new fans too, because I saw that
Yeah.
quote and I know all the comments were like, "Oh, this dude's awesome" and stuff. And then he's been very thankful the whole time too, like
Yep.
maybe
That's been
too
cool.
much, but I guess he's he realized he got his shot again, or he was surprised that they even picked him. But so I think if anything too, regardless how this fight plays out, he's gaining a bunch of new fans, and then hopefully if it's a banger of a fight, more fans, and then I think his next one people will be really excited for him. But so speaking of guys that have can wrestle that never do it, do you think Gaethje, is there a path? Because I was just checking, he went 1 for 3 in takedowns in that first 3 round fight. So you think maybe I mean I can't remember the last time he's really put a heavy wrestling game plan in or really even shot, but do you think there's a path there at all?
I'd be so shocked. And I remember when he shot the takedown on Fiziev, he shot it with like 10 seconds left and got like 2 seconds of ground control time.
Okay.
And then in his post-fight interview, he was like, "There you go. Stop asking me about takedowns or something like that." And I finally got one. I'd be shocked. Like, and Fiziev, I really respect his takedown defense too. Um, I think he can get tired when he grapples, but I think that his like first layer of takedown defense, like if Gaethje comes off the whistle, shoots a takedown, I think he gets stuffed pretty cleanly. Part of that is because Gaethje hasn't used his wrestling in forever, to the point where if you don't lose it, if you don't use it, you lose it to
Hmm.
an extent. I think that's kind of what happened to Gaethje. So, um, one thing I do think in this fight, do you think this is the UFC trying to sell a little bit of Justin Gaethje stock in hopes of Fiziev getting this win? Because they booked this fight once, and it's the veteran versus the up and comer, and the up and comer is Fiziev. And I think that when I look at all these lightweight up and comers, Fiziev's the one who fits the I'm gonna go out there like the lightweight, like we're gonna go get into a war, like it's gonna be entertaining. Like he fits that a lot more than some of these other guys. And when they needed someone to step in on short notice, they gave him the fight once. They gave him the opportunity once, and they gave it to him again when other guys were asking for the fight. But they gave it to him again with Pereira as the co-main. Is there like to me, I kind of feel like the UFC wants him to go knock out Gaethje. Like this is not saying this is what I think will happen, but would it be a bad outcome if Fiziev goes out there, knocks out Gaethje, as a Pereira co-main, gets a bunch of new fans, and now you have the 32-year-old red hot, has every fresh matchup you can imagine in the division. They're all amazing stylistic matchups, whether it be Poirier, Hooker, Holloway, Taporia. Like those are all sick fights with Fiziev in them. And he'd be red hot, and he's 32 instead of 37 like Gaethje. Like I just think that's kind of a very clear like financial opportunity to where they can get 10 fights out of Fiziev rather than 2 out of Gaethje.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I could definitely see that, especially like 'cause like we just said, Fiziev's already kind of doing his what he needs to do on the pre-fight stuff, getting fans, and I'm sure a lot of people probably forgot like how good he was and how exciting he was in the year and a half it's been since he last fought. So now coming back, like you said, at the you know with a Pereira headliner. I think we were just saying probably the biggest card of the year so far. Um, and you go out there and you can beat a aging Gaethje that's openly talking about retirement, which is never a good sign for fighters too when they're pretty adamant about it. Just came off the brutal KO loss, and there's a chance he could get a huge win against a huge name that's beloved in the sport among fans too. So I can definitely see like the catapult, the little trajectory they're maybe trying to put him on. The only thing I would say is, I mean, there were some other names. Like I know we said Gamrot or Dariush, and I would prefer. I mean, Dariush is really pretty old in his own right. So I prefer
Mhm.
the Fiziev a boost over the Gamrot. But the fight was against. Are you? I guess you are you saying for after Hooker? Because I was gonna say the fight was against Hooker to start.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Like
there was a chance that could just be because Gaethje's old and he might lose and get knocked out. I'm saying, but
yeah. The Hooker one, I think, that was a pretty good win-win for them. Dan
uh,
Hooker was red hot.
hmm
You booked that one, fans love it. The winner, I think either side of that comes out pretty good. I think this is still a little bit of a win-win, but like Gaethje taking out Hooker, I think is a little bit more impressive than beating the guy he's already beat, especially 5-round fight versus 3-round fight. So I think the last one was a win-win, and I think they try to book win-wins a little bit more often. I don't think this one's as much of a win-win as far as like outcome goes, because
yeah.
so I
I
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I haven't fully made my pick yet. It's I think I would lean Gaethje right now. Um, but it's just the concerns. It's not a skill concern, but it's concern of age and durability, and kind of like we just discussed trajectories. Fighting uh, a, a younger dude, an explosive dude. That first fight now, also that I remember was a lot closer than expected. I know he got touched up a little bit, and Gaethje ran away with it in that third round. Hopefully, Gaethje uses that jab a bit
Mm-hmm.
more. That's what I thought was one of the main things too in that third round that was helping him. So I still think Gaethje has all the tools and stuff to win this fight. Um, and so I'm tempted to lean him. It would just be kind of the outside factors, not the skill, but the outside factors of age and durability, and just the timing coming off the KO loss. And I think Fiziev's. I do believe in ring rust a little bit, but I think when you properly come back from an injury and take time off, or properly even come back from a knockout, I think not enough fighters do. I am willing to forgo some of the ring rust aspects to appreciate the intelligence that it takes to and the care for your own body that it takes to command yourself that way or command your camp that way. So, but as of right now, I'm still leaning Gaethje.
Yeah, I am going to pick Fiziev, but I thought long and hard about it. I already have the prediction written, so I have my pick kind of set in stone. And I picked Fiziev. I did think like really hard about it and bounce back both ways, and um, I just wasn't in love with the idea of taking like if I take Fiziev and I'm wrong, I won't feel as dumb as if I take Gaethje after the knockout. And then, like, if Fiziev were to go out there, land one shot, and like face plant him because his durability is trash, and I didn't get that pick right, I'd be like, come on, man.
Uh,
Um, so that was one of the bigger factors, honestly, in my pick. But also, like, I have always been really high on Fiziev. I picked him the first time around. I was impressed with some of the stuff he was doing. I thought he shut down Gaethje's leg kick really well in that first fight. Um, Gaethje made some of the adjustment to use the jab in the later rounds and won those later rounds off the jab. Um, and so I'm kind of hoping that Fiziev comes in with an answer to the jab, and if he has an answer to that jab, I think he can um, stay a little bit cleaner because I think once he started to get hit with the jab, he started to bleed. Once he started to bleed, he's a big like head movement and reaction guy. Once you start to bleed and can't see the shot coming, now you're just a punching bag. So I'm kind of hoping he can split the jabs a little bit, um, or at least have an answer for them in some form, and then stay clean to the point where he can kind of get back to what he was doing in the early rounds there. So I think it is a close fight. Um, the betting odds, I didn't say that earlier, but like, for example, just to illustrate my level of confidence, they had Fiziev as like Fiziev at minus 170, Gaethje at plus 138. Minus 170 is a fairly bettable number, and I don't have a bet on that, for example. So like, I'm not confident enough to lay the Gaethje or the Fiziev minus 170 despite picking them. So, all right. Next fight on the card, Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. I will start off with the betting odds right here off the top. Another very closely lined fight, which I think is one of the reasons this fight's so compelling because all these fights are pick 'em so far, basically. This one's plus 104, plus 104 Turner, minus 128 Bahamondes. When you've got like a card filled with fights that are the favorites less than minus 200, that's exciting to me. I'm not a big fan of these cards where you got 8 guys who are minus, you know, 400 and you got one guy who's minus 250. That's your lowest line guy. So,
I was
um
gonna say, especially when we've seen the UFC make pay-per-view cards look like
yeah.
that too, and it's like, geez.
Yeah, you got somebody versus Anthony Smith and the guy
Uh-huh.
fighting Anthony Smith is minus 500 and yeah.
Bo Nickel opening the card.
Yep. This is another great fight to me. Jalen Turner and Ignacio Bahamondes have both turned in some bangers. Turner has the hooker fight. His fight with Moicano was good, even if like he kind of quit a little bit in
Sold
the
it.
second. Yeah, he sold it pretty bad, but it was still a good fight. Impressive knockout over Bobby Green. Like the Mateusz Gamrot fight was fairly good considering Gamrot was landing takedowns and not doing much from top. It was good from Turner's perspective of bringing some entertainment to the octagon. Bahamondes coming off a first round knockout. I two first round knockouts actually. Last one was at UFC 306. He's a fairly entertaining prospect. Both guys 6'3", 75-inch reach. Two of the longer, more entertaining guys in that division. So this one is one I'm really pumped for. What do you make of this matchup?
Oh, I love this fight. I think in a fight card where you have Pereira, Gaethje, and Fiziev, I think this could be the fight of the night.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, I don't see how this fight could be boring. But as I say, the only thing that maybe wouldn't be fight of the night is if someone gets knocked out too quick. But yeah, I know I love that. I mean, you just went through Jalen Turner's little resume. I mean, truly an entertaining fighter when he can when it's a good matchup or stuff, especially. But um, he has such a talented striker. A big bag of strikes as well, and then has enough of a chin to keep things competitive, and get those little firefights. Unfortunately, can get cracked a little bit too much. But that's where the Bahamondes is. I think I really like his skill as still a little more of a prospect, and a little younger, but I think he's been looking great. He's been getting better too with his striking. I've liked. I know it depends how some people feel about Manuel Torres. I know some people thought that fight was a bit of a fraud check for Torres. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not in love with Torres, but I still think that was pretty talented. Talented win, talented knockout. So this is, if anything, to besides that, this fight should be an absolute firefight and war. I do think this is a huge step up too, though, for Bahamondes to see just how good he's progressing, and if he can really hang in there with a dangerous striker, that's a consistent ranked guy type thing. So I think um, for both of them, I mean, this will be a huge win on a Pereira card too, and everything. Get some more fans, and I know they both, I think, are on a in some of their fights. I was going to say have some bonus streaks going on right now, but um, overall, yeah, I'm excited. I think the UFC guys nailed this one.
Yeah, I think we just talked about a win-win situation. Like winner of this one is probably going to win in entertaining fashion, like we've kind of alluded to. Once again, on the Pereira card, like this one, I think the winner comes out of this looking pretty good, lined up to fight a guy in the rankings. I'd love to say top 10, but then you look at the rankings and you see Fiziev at 11, and you're like, oh my god, they're stacked. Um, so you know, going back to the Torres point, I am a big believer in Manuel Torres is an absolute fraud and isn't very good at fighting. But Ignacio Bahamondes got him out of there in a clean manner, exactly like he should. He's stepping back, avoiding those big swings, and just sitting down on counters. Like I'm not gonna. I'll gladly point out a fraud check when I think it's there, but I think that was a fraud check. But the guy doing the fraud checking looked outstanding, especially when the fight before he goes out there against Christos Giagos, and that guy's a little bit older, and you should probably knock him out. So he goes out there, smokes him all night with the straight shots, and then gives him a head kick and gets him out of there. Like, even if they're not the highest caliber wins, which I don't think they are. They are the way he's doing it is what's impressive to me. There is no like fool around and I'm gonna drag this guy who sucks to a decision. He's going out there and putting him out in the first round, which I love. And Turner's the guy I have always liked. And the one flaw with Turner is like you really don't know what you're gonna get when the going gets tough. Against Moicano, I think he kind of shut down a little bit. And I kind of feel bad because they made him beat Bobby Green half to death before they stopped the fight. Like he's in there with Bobby Green and he lands 8 shots after the guy's out cold, not responding, and they don't stop the fight. And then the next time he tries to hit the walk off where he doesn't have to, take 10 years off the guy's life. And well, that wasn't the time to do that. He was still in the fight. So it's been a tough run for Turner. And against Dan Hooker, he lands the head kick that he landed. And I had Turner KO and under 1.5 in that fight. And he lands the knockout with, 15 seconds left, or he lands the shot like 15 or 20 seconds before the under would have hit. And I'm like, just my luck. But besides the point, like
Yeah.
he nukes him with a head kick. Then he lands like 5 elbows. Then he lands a 1-2, and he's emptying the tank trying to finish the guy. Well, that night, Dan Hooker wasn't getting finished. You probably could have hit him with the sledgehammer upside the head and he would have kept fighting. So who am I to get mad that he kind of gassed out after throwing that much volume? So um, still, Turner has really impressed me, and I'm siding with him in this one. This is like I really like Bahamondes too. It's not a slight at Bahamondes. He's a guy I'd rather pick on than against, so it does kind of hurt me to pick against him. But I think both guys are striking defense. I think they're both kind of there to get hit. Um, but I just think that Turner's a little bit quicker and a little bit more powerful. So I kind of think he's going to be the guy to land that knockout shot first. And if anyone grapples, I think Turner has good submission skills that he might snag up. Like if Bahamondes isn't careful with that neck, Turner can jump gilly or roll a darts or something that may win him this fight as well. So that little bit of extra submission equity and a little bit extra power is enough for me to pick him. But Bahamondes is a tough guy to beat, and from all signs, he's not a guy who's gonna quit when the going gets tough. So I think it's another close fight. That's kind of been the theme of this card, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I agree with a lot of that. I wanted to pick up on the point of talking about Bahamondes' resume. It's tough because you kind of want to fault him, like, oh, he hasn't really fought anybody, but you can't fault him for doing what he's supposed to be doing against the opponents they've picked for him. So that's why I do really think this is a big jump. And I was going to agree with you too. You slid it in at the end there, but I do think Turner has a little bit of a wrestling upside. I think Bahamondes has been taken down in a couple of fights. I just don't think he's really been extremely tested. Not that Turner's going to be the one to like go wrestling heavy on him, but I do think, and something that could be an absolute firefight, I think that's there to land a takedown to win a round. The submission upside too, but just even if it's nonstop war with 40 seconds left, and each exchange is going for the other person, I think wrapping up a little takedown to just even take control for the last 30-40 seconds could swing around. The final thing is, I do think you listed Turner's resume earlier. He's been fighting just top-notch guys too, so I think maybe the step up could be a bit much. I want to pick Bahamondes for he was the underdog?
No,
he was actually favorite, right? Yeah.
Turner plus 104, Bahamondes minus 128.
Okay, because I don't know if I'm gonna go Gaethje yet. So, but that's why I would like to go Bahamondes just for the younger guy and stuff. But I think I'm also leaning Turner, and then now it is an upset pick, I guess. But I agree. I think he's fought the better talent. He's probably been tested a little bit more for sure. Like we keep saying in all these wars, and we think this could turn out to be one of them. So he's been in there. And I'm hoping we get the good Turner, and then I'm hoping a little bit for Splash of Wrestling to kind of tip the scales a little bit more. But I think this should be an amazing fight. I hope it's not a first round knockout, but it definitely might be. But I wouldn't mind seeing a couple rounds of this at least.
Yeah, I agree with you. And a quick add on to your point about wrestling. A lot of people want to say Jalen Turner is a quitter or he doesn't like it when the going gets tough. Well, one takedown and you go from, getting hit in the face and thinking, man, should I just take a seat and let the ref stop this? Well, one takedown, you find yourself on top. You get an extra minute to kind of gather your thoughts, get a little bit of air, land a couple shots. Like if he lands a takedown with a minute left, gets to that minute, goes to the corner, gets another minute, he'll fight through, he's not looking for the door at first sight like a lot of people make it seem. Like that's the type of thing that can really swing momentum for a guy like Turner, who's that athletic and kind of does slow down, especially when he's fighting at a really, really high pace. Like one takedown, controlling some position, maybe slapping on a body triangle or getting a couple hooks and just sitting there for a minute and just gathering your thoughts, then hitting the corner, taking another minute. Something like that may be like a really massive factor for him in sealing around and then helping him find success after that.
I say, especially too, because in his a couple of the, say, his last 4 or 5 fights, he hasn't had a wrestling advantage.
Yeah.
When you're going against people like Gamrot and Moicano and stuff like that, so it might be a good change of pace for him to at least have the confidence to think he can establish a little bit of a ground game.
Yeah, even the thought that it's there, like worst case, like in your head, worst case scenario, I can attempt to take down or jump a gilly. Against Moicano, it's like stay away, stay away.
Yeah, I'm not going down there.
All right, next fight on the card: Amanda Lemos versus Iasmin Lucindo. Once again, another closely lined fight. Lucindo, the minus 140 favorite. Lemos plus 114 as the underdog. Um, I didn't really have a ton of thoughts on this fight, to be honest. So I can let you lead off for what you have. I assume, based on your reaction, I assume you don't have a ton of thoughts either.
No. I do think this is one of the more fun fights they could put on. I'm here for this fight to a lot of others of the women's MMA matchups.
Mhm.
Um, but these were both people I don't know that were just soaring a little bit. They had a hot streak, and we really thought they could have been something, and then they both have been like tripped up a couple times. So, um, and what is this? This is straw weight, right? I don't know. This
Yep.
is, I think, like we've said, a division in need of some some new talent or someone that just can surge and string off a couple. So I don't see why they couldn't be Lemos or Luciendo if they can. But then this is the starter right here. But I don't have yeah, I'm not. This isn't on my top of my bucket list after especially the three fights we just discussed. But what was the odds on this one?
It was Lemos was the underdog at plus 114. Lucindo minus 140.
140. That's a. I was probably gonna lean Lemos, even though I was worried about just the age was the main thing too, and she's been like I said, she was on that streak, and it's been just downhill a little bit since her. I don't know. Maybe I'll just take the Lucindo just for the age discrepancy alone, and I mean I just think maybe Lemos is past that. Over that hill. I just thought that she might have one more in her, but actually, the more that I do think about it, finally, I'll probably be siding with the youth um, of Lucindo in this one.
Yeah. This is one of those fights that have the 10-year or age discrepancy where fighters at a that are the younger fighter in that scenario tend to win, and they win at um a 66% clip. She's a minus 140 favorite, which puts her at a 58.3% implied probability. So I guess if you're a big statistics person, they would say bet Lucindo in that situation, but I probably won't. Um, and I don't even have a ton of, or I don't even have limited thoughts on this because I don't like the fight. Like, I like Lucindo. I was very impressed with her debut when she went to war with Iasmin at UFC San Diego. I'll never forget that because I remember looking at the card and writing the preview and going, who are these two random women that are making their UFC debut on a main card of UFC San Diego? And then they fought, and it was fight of the night. And I was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll shut up." So, um, and I just don't have a high level of confidence in my opinion on how this fight is going to go. Like I think Lucinda wins. I think she lands takedowns, but she's another fighter who has the ability to land takedowns and won't shoot the fuckers for some reason. Instead, she'll just strike, and if you strike with Lemos, she'll live to get left hooked. Lemos also live to land some submissions. So, um, I think Lucindo could win this fight with getting on top and avoid the submission, spend 2 minutes in top, and move on with her life. But I don't think it's a bad fight. I think it's a good fight. I'm actually intrigued to see how it plays out, but I just don't have like a strong thought of how this one turns out. So I don't have as much to say about it per se.
Yeah, I'm not like I said, I'm not the biggest either. I just hoping this one could be a little exciting. Like I would prefer if the control time for 2 minutes wasn't the way of victory,
Yeah.
but because I think she only landed like 50 something strikes in her last fight. And I'm pretty sure that I'd assume that went to decision.
Yeah,
Um,
against Marina. Yeah.
Marina, which is a fair win in that weight class for sure, though, especially
Mhm.
for a young prospect like her at in her 20s and stuff. But I
Yeah.
would I just thought a little bit more exciting could have been.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on this fight, Lucindo to me is I think she's 23. She's a 23-year-old who, when she's 26, will be really, really, really good. But right now, she's 23, trying to fight like she has the 3 years of training that get her the extra skills. So she's kind of ahead of schedule to me, and that's kind of when I expected to trip up, because that's like Gene Matsumoto versus Rob Font a couple weeks ago. Gene Matsumoto probably could have won that fight if he would have had, was 27 instead of 25 and had the extra years of experience and training and whatnot. So that's one thing that I'll be concerned with for a while for Lucindo.
And I agree with that too. And that's what I meant by, for her, her version of tripping up is, I felt like she got such a big push because this weight class is so desperate for new talent that she is only 23. And give or take, she does have a fair amount of experience as a 23-year-old when it comes to combat or an MMA. But it's just, it's going to be tough for people to put all this like, oh, we want entertaining fights, we want domination, we want to see, a title contender right now. And it's like, she's just not there yet, though.
I agree. All right. Next fight on the card is the least competitively lined fight that we have on the main card by a pretty wide margin. Mauricio Ruffy is minus 500. The comeback on Bobby Green is plus 360. That is the second widest line on the card, behind only Alex Morono and Carlos Leal. I kind of think Bobby Green could win this fight if he doesn't get touched by a single punch and gets to round 3 and then can suddenly start pushing the pace with his cardio advantage. But how often do you see a guy get to round 3 without getting hit by a single punch? To me, I like Bobby Green. I respect his skills, but in my opinion, his durability is just shot. And they're putting him in there with a guy who has serious knockout power. It's sorry, man. Don't talk to me about it. That's the UFC. The UFC gave you that fight, not me. And feels like they're just teeing up Bobby to get knocked out in the first round, in my opinion.
I 100% agree. I think, especially with how good the Fighting Nerds have been doing. And I can't remember. I was trying to think if I saw Ruffy on, if it was the Jones card or the January card. I think it was the Jones one, though. The Jones Stipe.
He opened up a pay-per-view against James Yontop, which is crazy that happened, but it kind of tells you what they think about him.
And I didn't love the performance from him. Genuinely, I thought, I understand he's an amazing counter striker and stuff, and don't worry, I could see the talent and the upside and the draw to him. I just think when being a counter striker is already such a specific thing to do as a striker, that when someone isn't necessarily throwing at you and you now have no other solid offense and you're kind of waiting for them to throw, that's not my favorite. It's not my favorite striker or my favorite style of striking. That was the thing I was disappointed, was he obviously was winning that fight at times and stuff, and especially when Yontop would exchange and start to throw, then you'd be like, oh, okay, I see the counter. But you have to have some type of offense to aggressively keep the pace or keep attacking and land strikes, was just my downside. To that fight, now they turn around and give him Bobby Green, and I imagine Bobby Green will be throwing, and I think the counters, I don't think he'll be running out of that not having anything to counter issue. So I can definitely see a knockout happening to open this card, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, look at this, is what we were talking about. This guy's insane. He's amazing. He just killed a very old with a lot of miles on him Bobby Green that has no chin. But I'm sure people will love the highlight.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, they just did that with Patty. Patty's going from he's going from Tony to Bobby to Michael Chandler. And I think this is a little bit different because Patty gave him some miles. So this is even a further step down, but they're kind of using Bobby as that stepping stone right now. And I agree with you. I'm also not a massive fan of Ruffy, and it's not even I think with some adjustments he could be really good, because he has a lot of the body shape for lightweight that Prates has for welterweight, and they train together. And you can't just go out there and be Prates. I think Prates is a level or two above him, but if you attempted to fight a little bit more like Prates and less like Conor McGregor, when Prates is in the training room, you can ask him questions. Conor McGregor is not in the training room, and he really only fights like half of Conor
Uh
McGregor, and he
huh.
does it bad. So like, it's really
Yeah. I
it's
think
a
that's the other thing too. Is just anytime someone gets a Conor McGregor comp, that the
yeah.
UFC fans are going to run with it.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a cheap copy for sure, and they're giving him a layup here, and I like I said, I'm not a big fan here, and James Yontop is like, yeah, we'll give him a layup, and that I checked that was a John Jones card, so they give him a layup on a John Jones card, and it looked cool, but he didn't get the finish.
He didn't get the finish.
We were talking about how Bahamondes going out there and getting the finish. Well, and Yontop's got a chin on him, and he landed
Hmm.
some good shots, but like not only did he drop the round, he lost round 3 because he gassed out. So like I'm not in love with Ruffy, and there are a lot of fighters that I would pick to beat him in that division. A lot of them not even ranked. Like Esteban Ribovic, who just lost to Nasser Hesprat, but like I'd take Ribovic and Daniel Zellhuber and Ignacio Bahamondes and a lot of guys. But Bobby Green just isn't one of them purely because of the age and durability.
Yeah. So the two final things was going to be, I think like I was. This is a good fight though, still in the sense of, I was excited for that Ruffy that first fight, and then he goes to decision, and I was like, ugh, that wasn't my favorite performance for how much he hyped him. Oh, that was what I was going to say first. I think a lot of this stems from the guilty by association in the sense of Parates and Silva are getting so much hype that is so deserved because they are so talented. Oh, he also trains there, so he must be that good too. And it's not his fault. He's just, and maybe I will be nice and say he's not there yet, but he's just not to their level of fighter. So he is going to get some, but it's going to go both ways because he's getting a lot of praise now because of that. But then obviously, I probably wouldn't be so hard on him if I didn't think some of this hype was unwarranted. Um, but in saying that too, I didn't like his first performance. This would be another one. It should be a knockout and everything. Um, I mean, like I'll pay attention, and if he looks good, he looks good. I won't hate on it and stuff. I think what we just said earlier with Bahamondes, you do what you're supposed to do, and you look good. You can't too much can't be taken away from you from that perspective. And then, so I'm excited for this fight. And the final thing, do you think there'll be any chance? You said he can't have a single strike landed. Nothing with the Bobby Green cardio, throwing punches from the hips, different angles, keep the hands low. Anything?
I will say when I say he can't have a single punch landed, Bobby Green is the type of guy where like that's a very weird style. If anybody can like with that bad of durability can just have like elite head movement and not get touched once for 2 rounds, might be Bobby.
Hmm.
In all honesty, he's gonna go out there hands down, moving the head around, and if Ruffy is just sitting on counters, maybe he lands one. But what if Bobby decides, well, I'm not gonna throw either? Well, screw you. I know you're gonna try and counter me. So what if Bobby's the guy on the back foot trying to move the head and land the counters? Maybe he has some success. I don't think it's like a completely unforeseen thing that he finds success. But then every time I like craft a game plan in my head for Bobby to have success, then it goes, well, then Ruffy lands one right hand. He
Hmm.
lands one straight. He lands one hook. Then it's done. So that's kind
Yeah.
of every time I trip up when I get to that detail and making the case for Bobby.
Because I do think Bobby could have some success in this fight, especially unorthodox. I'd love to just see, especially when the counter fighters, I want to see them try to counter an unorthodox striker, and that way, the way he fights and punches. But he throws too much to not get caught, though, is the only issue. So I agree. I think I would say first round too, probably, but
And Ruffy's so much longer that like you now have to do that head movement and stuff when you're fighting a shorter guy. Like when he fought Drew Dober, for example, he looked great against Drew Dober doing that until he got caught, which is a whole nother discussion. But Drew Dober's shorter, doesn't have as much reach, so it's harder for him to find that shot when um he has so much more distance to get out of range if he comes in to land some shots, comes in hands down to land. Maybe he lands 3 shots, but he's got to get so much distance. And even though he is quick, it's so much ground to cover to get out of range of the guy who is just that much longer than him. That's just another reason you can see Ruffy landing that shot. Let's round this one up with some final thoughts for UFC 313. Any fights on the prelims that stand out to you?
I will go. The one I'll pick is the Bruno Ferreira Armin Petrosian. I think last time I checked, I think Ferreira was dogged a little bit too, so that was a dog I was maybe interested in sprinkling on. But I think that has a chance to be a pretty fun fight, back and forth. I think they both need the win. I think Petrosian's last fight was a double spinning back fist from the bullet, right? But I think this could be a fun matchup with some decent good striking in it. And they both got some power. Both have their own strengths. I was gonna say, I wasn't gonna like stamp a knockout like this one will have a knockout, but I think there's a good chance this one will could turn into a little bit of a war in a sense, and be a good little appetizer for what we're hoping this main card will turn into. And then I have a feeling I know which two you're gonna say, so I will say I don't know much about the Kuniev guy. I think I've just heard that he failed multiple steroid tests in his career, and I know they didn't check him. I don't think before this one, or maybe didn't do the full testing pool thing. So we'll see. But I do like me some Curtis Blades, and I think this is a crazy for how skilled I think Curtis Blades is compared to the rest of the heavyweights. And that his matchup is just with some guy on his first fight or on his debut fight. But
yeah, I'll add on to that one a little bit. So, Curtis, it's an insane matchup to make. But Kunaev, I didn't think he was terrible on Contender Series. Albeit he's fighting a guy who is fighting on Contender Series and not Curtis Blades. So like he could come out here and get dog washed easy, but I do think he actually has like some respectable skills. So I think he has a little bit more of a chance than people are giving him credit to. And I Curtis Blades is another guy that is he going to shoot takedowns? And Kunaev's actually not a bad wrestler, but like if he's not grappling or like his chin is a concern to me. So I think Curtis Blades always has an option to lose fights he shouldn't lose, unfortunately. But I give him the advantage here, but at the same time, I think Kunaev has a path to victory. And I know that a lot of people are like, oh, who's this random heavyweight who's getting the fight? And he looked good on Contenders, and I'm not too mad. I shouldn't say I'm not too mad. It's a dumb fight, but at the same time, like what they usually do is they have these guys beat up two guys at heavyweight who suck, and then they give them Curtis Blades or another guy, and they just skip giving them the two guys who suck. Like Shamil Gaziev, they had him fight two guys who suck, and then gave him Jairzinho Rosenstrike at a pick'em. Then we found out how good Jairzinho Rosenstrike was. Well, Gunaev just hasn't killed the two dudes that suck, so he's plus 265. If they would have ran him out there against Dontel Mays and another bum and let him knock both of them out, he'd be minus 200 here for no reason at all. So I just think it's interesting how that works. So I'm actually I'm interested in that fight just to see how he looks, considering he wasn't bad and now he's in here with Curtis. It's such a weird matchup that it brings me a little bit of intrigue, if that makes sense.
I guess when you put it that way, it kind of just streamlined the whole process. So then it makes me less mad. It took my bias against the heavyweight division out of it. That does make sense. Like, just get it over with. Like, maybe he's good, maybe he's not. I don't have to watch him like knock out two people, but
yeah. We don't have to see him versus Dontel Mays as like the co-main of a fight night for no reason.
Yeah, that is actually no. I really like this new game plan though. They should do this more often because we should not be subjected to having to watch heavyweights main event fight nights.
They should have kept Jairzinho Rosenstrike in the UFC and then just had him be the guy who every time someone wins on Contenders, they come in and fight Jairzinho. And like you either win or lose, and you're either top 10 or you're not.
Yeah, I'd be there for it.
Yeah. All right, so a couple shout outs. Josh Van versus Ray Saruya. Josh Van obviously gets shout out every chance I get. This is a pretty tough fight for him. Ray Saruya, good grappling and he's just willing to jump on every submission possible. So, like, I think there's a round where Ray Saruya could land a submission here where he's just jumping everything imaginable, um, and going for the sub and landing the takedowns. But Josh Van is such a good boxer with insane cardio, and talk about guys who work to the body. Like Josh Van will rip like 4-piece combinations to the body. And like if you're a wrestler who's going to go out there and exert a lot of energy, if Van, like, for example, let's say Saruya lands a takedown right off the bat, works really hard, gets to a good position, attempts a submission, and Van defends it, works to his feet, and then lands a 4-punch combination to the body. It's like, oh God, when you're the wrestler in that situation, it's like this is going to go downhill from there. I think that's the type of fight we get here. As long as Van doesn't get submitted in like the first round or like the first half of round 2, I think he's really going to rule here in round 3. And I wish this was on the main card because when you're talking about guys we want to spruce up for on a Pereira card, Josh Van is one of them. And if Ray Saruya submits Josh Van in the first round as like a young, impressive grappler, he deserves that love too. So it goes both ways in this matchup. It is prospect versus prospect. And then another one I'll shout out, Myron Santos versus Francis Marshall. Myron Santos knocked Khan Awfully's head off on the finale of The Ultimate Fighter. He won that season of featherweight, which I thought had higher quality opponents than a lot of recent Ultimate Fighter seasons. So I think if I were to pick any winner that could probably be good just based off the bracket that he was in, it'd be Santos. But the odds are a little crazy. He's minus 320. I'm not sure that I'm that bought in. He's got a tough fight against Francis Marshall, but I think he can win it. But more so, I'm interested in this one just to see how he looks because he has impressed me this far into his UFC tenure.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't watch that season. I heard he was the
I
Ultimate
don't blame you.
Fighter. Okay, yeah, I didn't watch it, so but I've heard good things about this guy, so I'm actually excited for that fight. And then yeah, I was waiting for you to. I think we're the Joshua Van Stan Club over here a little bit, but I'm excited because I do think Ray Saruya is pretty entertaining and interesting as a prospect as well. So um, I would pick that one as my main one. And overall, I think give or take how people could feel about the Bruno fight, but the Van into the Curtis Blades fight, I think before this main card kicks off, you're getting two really good fights ending off the prelims, which is always a great sign for an overall pay-per-view card.
I think the Bruno and Armin Petrosian fight's a good one too. I think I respect Armin Petrosian striking more than others. I picked him to beat Shaw. Actually, I was wrong, but shows
Yeah,
what I thought of his striking. And Bruno Ferreira, I mean, his knockout. He's the knockouts over Phil Hawes and
yeah,
RoboCop. After what RoboCop's been doing lately, going back and seeing him put RoboCop on a stretcher out there is really impressive. So those are both guys that I've liked. I've picked to win fights in the past, and they've been an entertaining fight. So when it comes to tossing 2 unranked middleweights on a prelim to have some exciting fights, those are 2 pretty good choices in my opinion. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, listening to us talk about fights. Make sure to go to vendettasportsmedia.com. That's where you can find written content that is every sport, not just the UFC. This week for the UFC content, there will be preview with some in-depth thoughts on the main card fights that we discussed here, as well as a best bets article. And then there will be some recap articles after the event. So that is the plan for UFC content on the website. Um, if you're a YouTube person, just make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube Vendetta Sports Media. We appreciate that as well. And make sure to tune in next week when we recap UFC 313.